Hey guys, it's Jen. Just coming to talk about what's going on in Divine Alchemy Academy. I think this is part of Module 3. And when we get into Module 3 and we're looking at our divine gifts and our spiritual gifts and how that really correlates to who we are, right? Our personality, our abilities, our empath abilities, the things that we're naturally good at that have nothing to do with spiritual gifts, right? And how we start really understanding that everything that is us, whether that's a personality trait or a spiritual gift or an ability that you have or like a natural talent for math, like all of those things actually are meant to be integrated as we move in our spiritual journey. Okay, so everything that I've done in my business up till now is the theme is embodied grace. So what does that mean? That means bringing in and bridging the gap between being human and being spiritual. And how do we integrate that? How do we embody all that is and allow ourselves to be all of that and show up that way all the time? Okay, so really good questions. And so I asked her if it was okay if I came in and talked about her where she was getting a little bit stuck. She's like, I just don't understand it. She's like, yes, I have my personality and yes, I have my spiritual gifts, and it's like I have one foot in both. And I'm like, but how can it be this and instead of this or? And so she was like, but I don't understand how my spiritual abilities, my empath abilities, how is that related to my personality? Like it seemed like two different disconnected things to her. So I asked her a few more questions to kind of dive deeper into that a little bit. So it's like, it makes sense to think that they're separate, but we're really meant to be in this time and space, especially right now in this part of the academy and in this time in your life and in this year and whenever you're seeing this video. It's all about what is the integration. How can we integrate that? How can we become all at the same time instead of feeling like we have to separate it? So in the past, that made a lot of sense, and especially for some of us who were not like brought up in the mystical, right? We were brought up in, this is the way you do your work and you do step by step, and you go to school, you get a degree, you do your job. It's all like a corporate landscape kind of thing is how we've been raised. So it doesn't quite make sense sometimes in the very beginning of how do I integrate spirituality into that, because it seems like it's totally separate. But as we move into 5D, it's an integration of both. So you will start to see things like corporate structures that bring in, and I don't know how this is going to show up, but I feel it that it's coming, where spiritual practice is going to be part of corporate structure, whether that's like teaching meditation through HR or, somehow it's going to integrate, because that's where we're at right now. As we move into 5D, it's integration. Okay. It's bringing you the human experience and the spirituality and bringing them together. So when she was like, I'm still just struggling with this, like I don't know how to really answer, like I get that in the chakras, like our heart center, like the upper chakras are all the spiritual, the lower chakras are all the physical, being here on the planet, and they kind of converge and meet in the heart space. Totally makes sense. But what if you allowed yourself to integrate all of that into all the time? So not only are you spiritual and whatever and loving and grounded, and spiritual in being grounded. So it's a really big topic. And again, you guys, I know you're all at different places in your spiritual journey. So this might be review for some of you, but it might be like, oh my God, that's amazing. So one of the things I know when I first started figuring out how to blend the idea of allowing myself to be fully spiritual and allowing myself to be fully human all together at the same time is, how can I bring more spirituality into my daily, everyday, whatever, right? So how this showed up for me personally in the beginning was, okay, I know I'm being asked to integrate the spiritual piece. And how do I do that in, like, when I balance the checkbook, right? Or how do I do that when I'm doing the dishes? It came a little bit more naturally with me when it came to cooking the food, because I loved cooking, and so love just kind of went through me whenever I was cooking. It was natural there. So then what I had to do was be like, okay, I want to bring in more of this. My guides are showing me like integration, integration, integration. That's what embodied grace means. Is embodied grace is bringing this into everything that you do. How can you let spirituality flow through you in everything you do? Okay. And we're all going to be better at certain things than others, right? So, but the piece would be, how can you use your intuition when you do your checkbook, or when you're doing the dishes, or when you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, right? So again, as far as this integration goes, this would, a really good example of this would be if you're mowing the lawn, for example. How can you bring spirituality into that? That seems like some mundane, stupid thing that you've got to do, right? Is to do lawn maintenance. But if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, how can you bring spirituality into that? How can you be joyful in the work that you're doing, right? So you would, while you're mowing the grass, you could be thanking God for the abundance and the beauty that creates your lawn, right? Like, so it's bringing the idea of faith and gratitude and spirituality, knowing that everything, like we are all, and we're all connected, and we are all one. Like it's we are all a part of this. We are part of the trees. We are part of the landscape. We are part of the earth. We are part of, like, bringing in that we are all connected in a different way of looking at it. And so the mundane things, we can get so stuck in just 3D and just doing what we have to do. We can get in just like, oh crap, I got to balance my checkbook, which I don't know if anybody does that anymore because it's online, but I still like to do it the old fashioned way and actually write it out and balance my checkbook. So when I first started the practice for myself, I was like, you know what, I knew that one of the biggest places for me was around finances and money. And so how I bring in the spirituality piece to having to do the checkbook, right? What was really interesting is when I started doing that, when I started saying, okay, I'm going to be spiritually minded and heart set and be in my heart space, in a spiritual space, when I get ready to do the checkbook, the bills, the laundry, whatever. So when I would sit down, I would actually pray over my finances and my checkbook and thank spirit ahead of time. So it was like this, okay, I know in spiritual truth all divine things flow. I know that money is just an energy. Thank you for showing me how this works in my checkbook when I didn't even know how it was going to show up in my checkbook. That's just how it was coming through, right? I'm like, don't know how this is going to work, but I'm just going to trust my guides. I'm going to trust that I'm supposed to bring spirituality into this, and I'm going to see how it happens. Well, what I ended up finding out was the more you do that, the more spiritual then that even becomes. And then that actually adjusted and totally shifted my finances. So bringing in the gratitude piece and the thank you for blessing me with plenty of money to pay all these bills and to do all these things that we want to do, created more abundance, created more prosperity, right? The same thing with like laundry. That's one of the things I really don't like to do is laundry. I'm like, oh, criminy. So if I can change my mindset, if I can integrate the spirituality into this, how can I be grateful for having the laundry? So what I did is I would shift my mindset. And every time I had to do laundry, I would think of, oh my gosh, Allie was having so much fun when she wore this shirt the other day. Or, man, that was a good game that Bailey had, right? Like you could, instead of thinking, oh shit, I have to do the laundry, you can bring in the spiritual piece and say, that was an awesome day, right? And be grateful that you have the family there that you're nurturing and caring for, and that you have laundry to do, right? So that was one of the ways that I shifted that. Doing dishes has always been kind of therapeutic for me. So that was easy to almost get into like a active meditation where I would try to just breathe and focus and not focus on anything else, but being mindful of what was going on in the dishes. As far as cooking, building love into this, like enjoying the time, maybe setting some music, enjoying all the flavors and the smells in the kitchen, and infusing the kitchen with the ideas and the thoughts of love and nurturing and sustainment for my family, like giving them the nutrients and the proper nutrition that they needed through the foods that we were eating. So it's bringing in all of that spirituality into stuff that doesn't really seem spiritual. Okay. I'm trying to think of other. Okay, so this is actually a really good example as well. Like I had, when we had the housekeeper come in, because that was my least favorite. So that was the first thing I did when I started figuring out like the money piece, and that's a totally different module than what we're working on now, but we'll get to that. But when I that was the first thing where I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust that if I keep using the money in a grateful way and in an abundant way, then I'm going to have more abundance. And so I hired a housekeeper. It was the best thing I ever did. One of the housekeepers, it was like whenever she would clean, it'd be like, okay, yeah, everything's clean. The other one, who totally had a heart for God, was always like almost always in praise and like worship. Like that's just how she spent her days. And she would sing and she was happy, and she always left a little note and a scripture when she left the house. When she was there and would clean and we came home, the house felt so good and felt so amazing. She didn't even realize probably that she was doing, but she was energetically abundantly blessing our house as she did the housekeeping because she likes to do it. So this is one of those other things that I talk about, like in the Ascension Club, and like even in the regular Facebook group that I have, that's the free Facebook group. I'm always talking about being in your heart and really learning what it means to do the work from your heart and letting go of what you think you should do or what you shouldn't do, the job you should have or that you shouldn't have, and start doing what feels good to you. If you love housekeeping, because I know some people love it, they love to do the cleaning because it feels so good when it's all done. Like they're like, that was dirty and now it's clean and I did that. You know, it makes them feel really good. Or the same thing with like people who do closet organizing, or like it doesn't matter what the job is, right? Like whether you're a brain surgeon or a bartender, that's kind of my little goofy thing that I always say. It doesn't matter which job you have. It's, are you doing it because it feels good and it makes you happy? And if that's the case, then it will energetically exude all the way around you. So when we're looking at the spiritual gifts, and this is I'm going to go right back into module 3 for the Academy.